and welcome to the Nerfhammer podcast. I'm Rowan.
And I'm Cameron.
So, in this week's news, Diablo 3 has been released along with plenty of footage from various YouTubers across the internet by Blizzard, and to start things off with their launch is a rather shaky release as their servers could not handle the amount of people trying to download their game. A good sign that it's popular, but not good for their customers, as there's been real problems. Their servers have been consistently intermittent over 2 days, and to top that off, they've been using an always online DRM, and people against this in principle anyway, but it's been a particular hassle, seeing as people have been losing save files between checkpoints and other important data. Cameron, what do you think how do the risks and benefits weigh out for sort of having your information saved on the internet so you can use it from anywhere versus sort of this early instability you get when servers first go out?
I think that the whole thing of having this game, which though I do look forward to playing it at some point, I don't really think the save files are very good to be kept on the internet, as really I don't think I'm ever going to play on a different computer than I do now, and if I do, I don't really think it's really worth it, to be honest. I think I'm going to be playing on one desktop for quite a while, and there's very few games I think will outlive one computer with me, with the exception of Lotro and Tribes really, but both of those get past this and don't cock up at all. So yeah, I think it's just the whole server thing going down and losing save files. That's not an argument to really start off. That's an argument of why aren't they doing this properly. There's so many things you can learn from. However, they're still making amateur mistakes, to put it quite frankly. And I think there are loads of other people out there who've been doing this perfectly for a very long time. It's just looking at what they're doing and following that guideline.
Something you have to take into consideration, though, from the developer's perspective rather than simply the consumer's perspective, because obviously the servers will stabilize, but they're actually doing a real money auction house. So you can buy gold with real money and use it to purchase items from other players. So the problem with this is if you don't have always online DRM, cheating is surely going to become rampant, and with an economy like that, yeah, not good, especially if sort of PvP is on its way. So there's an advantage to people with money versus time anyway, but I mean, surely with that sort of system, having always online DRM is going to be a benefit. I don't know. What do you think? Or do you think a real money auction house is just a bad idea to start with?
I think a real money auction house is a terrible idea to start with, because it just defeats the whole point of having to earn stuff. If I can log in and go, well, yeah, okay, I've got 50 quid for my birthday anyway, quickly splash out on all the best gear, when there are going to be other people out there who really do earn it. And just because you have the best gear doesn't make you the best player, because I mean, if a person's been playing a game for 5 years, shall we say, and this game's kept up or whatever, and they've earned their way up to the highest level possible, and they've got all the best gear, they've got all the second best gear, and I come on and I get a free thing up to the highest level, I get all the best gear. I'm not going to be anywhere as good as the person who has the second best gear, who's been playing for 5 years, as experience trumps armor every time. And well, if you're just going to have a real money auction house, you're taking away that whole rule, because you're just going to take away the whole thing of having to experience the game. You can just go in there, someone wants me to come and help them in PvP, and they've given me a free copy of the game. Okay, I'll just spend a $5 to help him. Job done.
From a single player perspective, though, on the idea of sort of people using God mode or sort of console cheats, surely from a single player perspective, the ability to sort of get what you want just by giving Blizzard a bit of money, surely that's perhaps a positive outcome?
It depends. I mean, if you're getting incredibly frustrated by not being able to do something, then yeah, it's going to feel good at the time. But as I have always thought, you really do notice the difference between 39p putting onto your computer if it wasn't already on there, or however much it's going to be. I'm still thinking of transactions and microtransactions in games, but that small amount of money, you notice it more putting onto a game, and I honestly think that you have to be incredibly desperate at that point to have to put the money on. I think if you're going to be doing this, it really does have to be in a very bad situation, or you're not really looking to enjoy a game, you're looking to get to the highest level and just boast about it, really.
Talking of how devs handle their products, Star Wars The Old Republic by BioWare have recently sort of released a sort of free-to-play demo to try and lure players in, but is that really going to be effective now, seeing as, I mean, the game's been out for a while, not great reviews, I mean, there's people playing it, but is that something they should have done in the beginning, or, I mean, do you think that's actually going to make an impact on their number of subscribers or purchasers? I can't remember their business model.
I honestly think that it's going to be incredibly hard, and I do stress the word incredibly, for them to crawl back from the hole they dug when they first released this. As they basically, they came up saying this is going to be amazing, you know, George Lucas selling his soul to the point where no one else knows where it's gone now. But they came up with this is going to be amazing, effectively just pushed the consumer away, got hit by the consumer a lot, and now is turning incredibly to desperation, and like effectively treating this as like a drug modelling where you have to give them a little free taste and they'll come running. But that really, I honestly think the way they've set up their business so far, you're going to have to do a lot more than just put up a free demo. You're going to have to do so much more than that, and I honestly can't see how that's going to happen. I mean, I'm probably going to download the free demo, play it, and then go, this confirms what I've been thinking, as it's not just my opinion here. This is an opinion which is stretched out for since the game actually came out on, like, you know, beta and stuff. This is an opinion that's stretched out because it is just illusion breaking, like, you know, the whole Star Wars thing is your lightsaber is an inflatable, like, you know, lightsaber. It just whacks them instead of slicing through them. Yes, there is a small ability to be able to fly, but you've had that in many MMOs, and the cost, I honestly don't think that a demo is going to take away that whole cost factor. And if they're going to have a boom of what they call subscribers, if they put them under the same belt from demos, then I honestly think that's just an easy way to cheat into, like, you know, higher numbers, is having demo subscribers still being subscribers.
In terms of demos, though, do you think demos actually help boost the sales of the game, or do you think people are just going to, I mean, I, for one, I mean, there have been a couple of games where I've just tried them on the demo and then decided that I wasn't going to pick them up after all. So, in some cases, it obviously hurts sort of the sales, but do you reckon they're positive or negative overall?
I'm still trying to remember, like, you know, demos I've actually thought were very good. Actually, I can think of one demo that I thought was very good. It was Unreal Tournament 2004 demo, but that already had me going in a series of games. So when the demo came out, I was like really trying to reach and grab it, as I'd already played the last couple of games. So I'm not really sure if that counts, as I was already hooked before the demo. But I haven't actually played too many demos, as really nowadays you can tell, because of the internet and YouTube and stuff, you can tell pretty much what a game's going to be like without having to download the demo, have to go through, like, you know, leaving the game downloading overnight when you go to bed, waking up, and then having to go through all the stuff that you should have wasted up an hour to do, wasting half a day playing it, and then sometimes it being disappointing, really. So you don't really have to go through that anymore, so I think demos are becoming less and less of a thing. There are some games which I know people will say, oh, but the demo for this was good, like Team Fortress 2, but I never really jumped to those demos, unfortunately, so it did just sort of sail past me.
And last quick bit of news is Crisis 3, which has sort of been slipping under the radar, hasn't had a huge amount of news sort of covering it, but in one of their newer teaser trailers, it appears there's a flamethrower, as well as EA are also promoting the idea of using a bow in the game, quite a futuristic sort of compound bow, but again, it's quite an interesting twist from sort of their very futuristic, augmented people sort of take they've been going previously on the series. Do you you think it's going to be worth sort of taking a look at? Is this going to be some innovation worth sort of being interested in, or do you think that's not much of a useful change?
What, the bow?
The fact that they're not using such a sort of futuristic setting, they're changing it up a bit.
Well, this is also happening in other games like Assassin's Creed, where they've moved from a very good game of knives and crossbows and stuff up to now bombs, and this is basically doing the opposite version, but it does seem like it's just going to sort of slip up a bit, as though you might have some very skillful people using bows and stuff, you're going to have to push the bow very far down the consumer's throat if you can be using more powerful weapons or cooler weapons in the bow.
Fair enough, so we'll keep our eye out to see how that develops. So, our question for this week is single player versus multiplayer in terms of the longevity of the game and what's most enjoyable, as well as what's best for sort of the consumer and everything else. So, Cameron, do you reckon that you sort of enjoy single player or multiplayer games more?
Well, that also depends on your type of game. I mean, FPSs, it's going to be incredibly hard to find one that's pure single player and that you enjoy incredibly. As I mean, most FPSs nowadays are completely devoted to the whole multiplayer thing, and I understand why. I mean, Team Fortress 2 and COD and stuff, they all do incredibly well off the multiplayer, and it all works tremendously. Like Tribes being another game that works completely on multiplayer. However, again, if there was one to come out, I can flip my argument the opposite way, because there's always going to be a first. But really, I'm struggling to think of games that are purely multiplayer that I enjoy, and so far I can only think of one at the moment. Actually, no, wait, two. Portal 1, which is purely single player, and Minecraft.
Fair enough. Doesn't quite come under shooter, but interesting.
There's bows.
I wonder if it's possible to actually create a good first-person shooter experience, or whether it actually requires that human element.
Well, the human element sort of just makes it a new difficulty, because if you were to play through a completely single-player game enough that you weren't sick of it, you got past that whole stage and you're just loving the whole thing, you would just know what's going to happen too much. Which is something which I think the Halo, like, because I played Halo more than any other, single campaign, you did know what was going to happen, and there's very little surprise in it anymore. When, if you literally just put it so a split screen with another person, it's a completely different game. If you add the whole multiplayer thing, it's another completely different level. And I think that's what gives a game depth, really, is it's evolving with multiplayer rather than being purely multiplayer or being purely single player. Like Minecraft.
Enough. In terms of the longevity of a game, then, if we're talking about sort of benefits to the company, I mean, if they're releasing a single player game, people will sort of play it, beat it, and be ready for the next one. But with a multiplayer game, it's going to go a lot longer. So obviously the game will get played a lot more, and it's better sort of for the game. But do you reckon it's better for the company to create a good multiplayer experience or a good single player experience, because they can sell more single player games? Or do you reckon the idea of getting an improvement on their multiplayer experience will bring more players in?
I think that if you're going to put this in, you have to wonder what this game's about, or you need to give an example of a game, because, as I said, it still can be technically very rarely put into an FPS, Minecraft, but that's perfect single player, and they focus more on the single player, works perfectly. Whereas you have things that are completely focused and they're completely FPS, like Tribes, Ascend, and that's amazing as well. So I need to know what sort of game we're talking about here.
I was more talking sort of an abstraction, but so for example, if we're just going to use FPS in a sort of as a first person perspective, as you've been, if we go, for example, let's think, so say Section 8 Prejudice, that was a primarily single player experience, so they can sort of create one of those, people will play it and be waiting for the next game. But for example, Tribes Ascend, more people will play it, but that'll have a longer life cycle, so people won't necessarily be waiting for the next game of that. So, which do you reckon is going to sort of be more beneficial for the company?
I think throwing loads of single player games at some will really kill it quite quickly, unless it's like based on a movie or whatever, in which case it's only a single player for a very brief amount of time whilst there's a hype. So I'd have to say multiplayer. However, you can't just plug a multiplayer into the ground, have the money flowing in and expect it to live forever. This is something which you do have to like throw down what is effectively a mine of multiplayer, keep it like ticking for a while, then explode it at a certain point and leave in its midst a new game which you leech money off as well.
Alright, I think that's going to wrap us up for this week's episode. Thank you everybody for listening. I've been Rowan.
And I've been Cameron.
See you next week.